You're listening to Sports Radio Detroit.
Alright, hello everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Last Track Review podcast here on Sports Radio Detroit. As always, I'm your host, Chris Platte. How's everyone doing? I hope they are doing well. The weather is beautiful. It's finally picking up in the Michigan area. Got back-to-back 60-degree days for the first time this year. So feeling good, feeling great. I do want to take a quick moment to shout out and thank all the listeners of Sports Radio Detroit and of this podcast in particular, because Roger just told me that the Nipsey Hussle tribute podcast that I did last week, where I again paid tribute to Nipsey, one of the greatest artists of our generation, and an artist who was unfortunately and tragically murdered in his hometown last weekend. He did so much and he meant so much, and I put a lot of work into that podcast, and it really was it was an emotional podcast for me. And Roger told me that the numbers on it came back and it was the number one podcast in the last 30 days on Sports Radio Detroit. So I do really want to just take this time and sincerely thank everyone who listened to that podcast, and maybe you went back and you were inspired to listen to his music or to look at his interviews or some of the many things that he did, because he truly was a very inspirational and very, very great human being, just on all levels, just transcending pop culture, transcending any just celebrity aspect. Just as a pure human, he was a good and great man. So thank you for everyone for rocking with me for that episode. I'm sorry it had to be such a downer, but I just felt that it was such a big moment, and it's such an important moment. And even though I don't like recording those kind of podcasts, because I don't like to have to think about that stuff, I don't like to have to entertain that stuff, and I don't like to acknowledge the fact that stuff happens, but the fact that you guys rocked with the episode and it got a lot of numbers, and I hope I influenced some people who maybe just weren't sure of Nipsey Hussle or didn't know the full story on him, and I hope I changed some perspectives on that. So once again, I want to thank everybody for that. But let's get back to today's episode, which is the second half of the bracket podcast. Now, originally when I started recording the first podcast 2 weeks ago, for the Hip Hop Madness bracket that I myself created, and John Adams, my good friend and basically family brother, he created the graphic and turned it into real life. And so I explained how the bracket was made, all that stuff. So I did that, and then I did the round of 64. And because the time was so long, I actually decided to split this up into two podcasts. So here we go. We're gonna go through the round of 32 all the way to the end and give our national champion. I have no clue how long this podcast is going to be, but I'm going to try and make this as efficient as possible. So let's just start by the South region and go the same order we were going for the round of 64 to keep everything continuous. And by the way, if you hear me just stop for a second, I'm probably just taking a quick breath of water because this is gonna be a pretty talkative podcast for me personally. So we got in the round of 32 to kick off the South. We got the number 1 seed Riding Dirty versus number 9 seed the Carter 3. Now, the Carter 3 is one of my favorite albums, just from a personal perspective, an album that I truly enjoy front to back. Again, it's peak Wayne. It's when Wayne is just this absolute superstar. He has one of the most incredible voices and hypnotic voices of any artist of any genre, in my opinion. I don't know what it is about Wayne's voice, but it is extremely easy for me to listen to, and I thoroughly enjoy it. Not only that, but excellent rapping. This is peak Wayne. He's got the charisma, he's got the bars, he's got those clever moments scattered all throughout his project. And not to mention, he's got the pop songs with Bobby Valentino, Miss Officer, one of my favorites. He's got T-Pain on Got Money. Again, this is 2008. This is peak T-Pain. This is like pretty much peak Bobby Valentino as well, kind of like near the end of Bobby Valentino's peak as a pop star. But yeah, T-Pain, mega superstar. They got Jay-Z on Mr. Carter, of course, perfectly. You know, Wayne and Jay had their beef at that time, or well, throughout the history, but we're able to patch it up and do that record. And so this is just a great album in all aspects. It's an album that I think is very, very influential in today's hip hop climate. Like, in fact, Lil Uzi, one of my favorite of the new age rappers, talks about when he heard the Carter 3 for the first time, he knew that Lil Wayne was the best rapper alive. And a lot of people's minds, that's what this moment was. So it was a huge moment for hip hop. But that being said, I went with Riding Dirty. Riding Dirty is just an excellent album front to back. It is UGK at its finest. Man, I mean, just the instrumentation, Pimp C just doing a great job arranging a lot of the chords and coming up with a lot of the layers of the instrumentals. When I listen to Riding Dirty, it's just such a complete album that even though personally I love the Carter 3, I'm gonna go with Riding Dirty just because of just objectively. If I have to be objective, I think it's a better album. So Riding Dirty moves on. Then next matchup we got is the Diary versus the Aquemini. Now the Diary is an interesting project because Scarface is very open. He's very biographical. The instrumentation is dope. And then Aquemini, of course, is Outkast being Outkast, and I think it's one of the peaks of Outkast where it's just you. Outkast is unique in the sense that you know what you're gonna get, but at the same time you don't. They're very, very unpredictable. They have such an eclectic style that crosses many genres, many sounds, mashing funk, rock, pop, rap, any genre you can really think of, blues. They capture it all and they bring it all together in such a unique and clever way. But despite that, I find myself, as much as I love Outkast, the Diary is an album that I can listen to on repeat more. And I think the influence of the Diary is even greater than Aquemini in the fact that the Diary is an album that really just kind of captures the South in such a great way, and you can really see a lot of the Southern roots as far as the music of the Diary. Like, you can see how albums like Soul Food, like just essential sounds that have stayed within the South region of hip hop, come from that album. Now that album's, again, not like the originator, but it is the one that really crystallifies and exemplifies it to where if you're looking back in history, if you're playing that record, it still sounds like it came from the South. Even though the South has a much different sound today, it still has a lot of those elements, and that comes from the Diary. So the Diary moves on. Those were some of the tougher matchups in the second round. Then we got the Drought 3 versus ATLiens. The Drought 3 is Lil Wayne's mixtape. ATLiens, once again, another Outkast project. And ATLiens, the only flaw in it, I like a lot of the records on there. I like Me and You. I like Two Dope Boys in a Cadillac, ATLiens, Babylon's one of my favorite records ever. Like, just ever, not even just Outkast, just ever. A record I really enjoy. And the Drought 3, though, is just like, it's just a cheat code is what it is. You got Wayne jacking all the hottest beats for 2 albums, or 2 mixtapes, essentially, because he made it a disc 1 and a disc 2. So he's got 2 discs of the most poppin' instrumentals of that time, of that era. And then you got Lil Wayne, who's, at this point is on fire and has his claim as the best rapper alive, and this and that. So you're getting amazing bars, amazing instrumentation. And now, granted, a lot of it is, mixtape quality, so it's a little bit fuzzy and doesn't sound as clean as the actual studio quality productions of those instrumentals. But still, you're just getting peak lyricism, man. Like, this is from a lyrical perspective, this is, in my opinion, one of the best performances on a hip-hop project ever. Wayne is just absolutely snapping, going toe-to-toe with every beat. And, and Wayne is just an artist that when he raps, and he raps so damn well, that he makes the song his, and that's a real testament to Wayne's songwriting ability. And that's something that Drake, I think, has learned and adapted from Wayne, because Drake is one of the great artists at doing that too, taking a song that once Drake is put on it as a feature, it's now a Drake song. It's no longer a Block Boy JB song. Or it's no longer, a who else does he frequently collaborate with or has collaborated with? It's not a Lil Baby song. It's not a Young Thug song. It's not a Travis song. Like these are big artists, but Drake is just Drake, and he just understands how to write songs so well that when he does it, it just becomes his. He's got this swagger, this aura, and that's what Wayne did with a lot of these beats. Because a lot of these beats nowadays, when I go back and listen to them, they don't sound like they don't sound like the original. I don't think of the original studio versions of these records. I think of the Wayne version, because I'm a person who enjoys dope bars, but also just Wayne's charisma and personality, and again, just elite level rapping just does it for me. So the Drought 3 moves on versus ATLians. Next, we got Soul Food and Trap Music. Now, Soul Food, Goody Mob versus T.I. Trap Music. I'm okay with being called crazy here. I had T.I. Trap Music moving on in an upset. So once again, the 15 seed moves on another round. Trap Music to me is just a phenomenal album by T.I. front to back. Again, I'll admit my T.I. bias. I love T.I. He's one of my favorite artists ever, and he's just got such an incredible personality when it comes to records. And man, like just playing the records off there 1 through 17 on Trap Music is just, you don't even gotta think about pressing the skip button on this project, man. It's just nothing but great beats, amazing beats. Of course, it's got the classic Rubber Band Man, but it's also got one of my favorite Kanye cuts ever, and that's just Doing My Job. And Doing My Job to me is just such a dope. That's like a prime crystallized Kanye production record, and T.I. just absolutely kills it. And so Trap Music to me is just an album that has so many great records. And as much as I love Soul Food, and as much as I've grown to appreciate it, that was not an album that I grew up on. That was an album that I had to go back and research. So I will admit that this is an album that I don't connect with as personally as Trap Music. But that being said, that's why I have Trap Music moving on, and I'll admit that it might be personal preference. In my opinion, with the Carter 3 versus Riding Dirty, to me, I enjoy them an almost equal amount, so it's easy to me to go objectively Riding Dirty over the Carter 3 versus Soul Food and Trap Music, which is, to me, again, in my personal opinion, Trap Music is just a much more entertaining product, and one that I can return to more often, so that's why I pick it. So those are the winners of the South region. Let's jump to the West. So in the West, we got The Chronic by Dr. Dre versus America's Most Wanted by Ice Cube. The Chronic moves on pretty easily. The Chronic's a staple in hip-hop. I love Ice Cube. Again, elite lyricism, awesome skits, but The Chronic has even better skits, truth be told. And the instrumentation in The Chronic is better, and just The Chronic is so much more central to West Coast hip-hop. But again, I don't want to disrespect America's Most Wanted, because that is an incredible album and a historic album. But it loses pretty easy. It's The Chronic. It's one of the greatest albums of all time. So, we're getting to that point in the tournament where it's great albums going against each other. And sometimes there's just like all-time albums facing off against great albums, and that all-time album is just a level better, and that's all it is. So then we got the 7 Day Theory Machiavelli versus Snoop Dogg's debut Doggy Style. Doggy Style moves on pretty easily. Again, I don't know what it is about West Coast, man, but West Coast just always, to me, has so many amazing, awesome skits. Doggy Style is an album that exemplifies and crystallifies that to its extreme, and then just has so many catchy melodies and just great feature placement. Everything about that album to me is just entertaining front to back. There's absolutely no skips. On the 7 Day Theory, there are some records on there that I'm just kind of okay on. I'm not really a big fan of some of the records on there, but for the most part, despite despite it being a great album, it has its minor flaws, and Doggy Style is an album that to me is damn near flawless. So Doggy Style moves on pretty easily. Next, we got All Eyes on Me versus To Pimp a Butterfly. This one is easy, as great as All Eyes on Me is. What kills it, and I didn't talk about this last round, but what kills it is quite simply just the feature placement. Pac really went feature crazy on this album. He put again, it was a double album, so he put a lot of outlaws on there, a lot of features to kind of fill in the holes. He just kind of like, there's even videos of his recording process where he's like, okay, I'm just recording this record, and when I have to say what I have to say, and it's done, whether it's one verse or two verses or three verses, I'm done with that record. And if we need more verses on it, I send it out. If we need a hook on it, I send it out, and we'll figure that out later. Like, Tupac just really just kind of focused on saying what he wanted to say, because it was such a moment. He was just getting out of prison, and all of this built up aggression and thoughts. So he just wanted to get all of that out, and then once he felt he didn't have anything to say on that record, he just tossed it to some of the features that he relied on. And unfortunately for him, some of the features just did not deliver, and that's what kind of makes this album drag on, because there's a lot of times where there's records on here that I thoroughly enjoy, but when it gets to one of the features, it just kind of ruins it for me. Versus To Pimp a Butterfly, which is an album that's the exact opposite. Kendrick is very strategic with features. He's got in total, I think six, something like that. I'm just guessing off the top of my head here. I'm trying to think about it out loud, but very, very selective with his features. He's got Snoop Dogg, he's got Rhapsody, he's got Belial, he's got Anna Wise, and he's got James. I can never remember his last name. But anyways, he's got, so that's 5. Yeah, I think those are the only features on there. So I think he's only got 5, if I'm not mistaken, off the top of my head. And, so he was very selective. And Kendrick really carried that album through. And To Pimp a Butterfly to me is such an excellent album. And so I'll save more on that debate when it gets to a more difficult matchup. The next matchup I got, and this one is going to probably cause me the most flack among any longtime hip-hop fan, and that's Good Kid, Mad City versus Straight Outta Compton. So Straight Outta Compton, the 2 seed, Good Kid, Mad City, excuse me, the 7th seed. Straight Outta Compton is a great album, no doubt. Listen, if you want to beat me, I got Good Kid, Mad City moving on, but if you want to beat me, all you have to say is one word: influence. The influence of Straight Outta Compton on just not only the West Coast, but hip-hop in general, and just all the careers it birthed. And it even, like, Good Kid, Mad City, is a trace of Straight Outta Compton. So I mean, influence can really beat this. So I'm not denying that. I'll admit that if anybody wants to say Straight Outta Compton over Good Kid, that is totally fine. I think this to me is just a generational thing. I grew up with Good Kid, Mad City, so I hold it a special place in my heart. And truth be told, I can listen to that album more because the sounds of it, the sonics of that album, more fit my time versus Straight Outta Compton, which, although it's dope, and don't get me wrong, that's a record that I listen to thoroughly, it's just it's definitely not the modern sound that we have that Good Kid, Mad City is. And so, just from a pure bias standpoint, I'm going Good Kid, Mad City, but I'm not mad at anybody who disagrees. All right, let's move on to the North. The North, we got My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy versus Food and Liquor. My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy moves on pretty easily. Food and Liquor is a cool album to listen to all the way through, but My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy is a damn near sonic orgasm. It's just amazing front to back. The production is absolutely impeccable. Late Registration versus the Eminem Show. This one was tough because I love Late Registration, but Eminem Show is just peak Eminem. That's apex Eminem. That's Eminem just rapping his ass off, and where it's one of those albums that, even though, again, I'm hearing those records or some of those records as they come out, and I'm only hearing the edited versions because I'm a kid. So I'm not experiencing the full experience, but when I listen to that album, it takes me to a moment. You can feel this is Eminem at his apex. This is Eminem when he has the world in his palms and he can say whatever he wants because the world is watching him and he's got everybody's eyes and attention. And you feel that in this record. And there's just so many great all-time records that are on here that really, to me, this is arguably Eminem's best album. And it's an amazing album. And Late Registration, as much as I love that album front to back, it's so great. It's so just beautiful to listen to whenever you need to kind of brighten up your day. Eminem Show to me is just it creates this moment. And Late Registration is starting to do that because of how Kanye shifted personality-wise. So you can actually argue Late Registration. But to me, this is just Eminem at his peak. To me, just flawless rapping. One of the best albums there is. Next, we got Slim Shady LP versus College Dropout. College Dropout moves on pretty easily. Slim Shady LP is the one Eminem project, the one great Eminem project that I don't personally often gravitate to. You know, I get what it was when it came out. It was, oh my God, what's this? This guy's saying all this crazy shit, doing everything just off the wall. Nobody knew how to really define or understand what Eminem was when the Slim Shady LP hit. But that being said, the content just don't grab me. You know, I don't have too much relatability to a lot of those thoughts, a lot of those expressions in that record versus the College Dropout, which is something that I can listen to. And again, it might be a little bit of a generational thing as well, because the College Dropout just speaks to just some motivational, and this is Kanye being a superhero to me, man. Like this is the moment that Kanye captured America's heart. And and Eminem captured America's attention in a much, much different way with the Slim Shady LP. But yeah, to me, it's just the College Dropout I just enjoy way more. The content's way more relatable. I'm not listening to the Slim Shady LP by choice, front to back, rarely ever, if ever anymore. Versus the College Dropout's an album where on a Tuesday I can throw that on and end up listening to the whole album because I absolutely love that album. So College Dropout moves on. Next, to round out the North Division round of 32, we got Graduation versus Marshall Mathers LP. Marshall Mathers LP is an excellent album. This is Eminem absolutely rapping his ass off, doing just Eminem things, man. The technical and cerebral skill of the Marshall Mathers LP is impeccable. And as somebody who really appreciates that aspect of hip hop, I really enjoy the Marshall Mathers LP album because, again, it's like the Eminem Show where it feels like a moment. And, you look at interviews of a lot of artists, like Kendrick Lamar will talk about, I learned how to rap because of the Marshall Mathers LP, because he was blown away by how is Eminem twisting these words, putting these words here. It's all very, very technical. And for people that are super nerdy when it comes to this stuff like myself, I can really appreciate that. I can really appreciate the skill of it, but this is a personal bias of mine. Graduation is, to me, one of my favorite albums ever, like just across all genres, like one of my favorite albums. It's just got all the moods that I'm looking for. It's very motivational, very inspirational, very uplifting. And again, that's just the type of content that I'm into. I'm into content that really just motivates me, inspires me, or brings me into a good mood, or just makes me feel good. And it's got a lot of that. Graduation has it's like a futuristic church album, and I absolutely love it. It's just very, very beautiful, and it has so many of my favorite records, from Flashing Lights to Everything I Am to Homecoming, Big Brother, and then of course you got that 4-track start at the beginning with Good Morning, Homecoming. Not Homecoming. Good Morning, Champion, Stronger, and I Wonder. Just an amazing 4-track start to the album. Just an absolute album. An absolute amazing album. And I again, if anybody wants to say Marshall Mathers LP is better than Graduation, you're probably right. Truth be told, you're probably right on that assertion. But to me, this is just a personal preference thing, and if you tell me I could only listen to one of these albums for the rest of my life, every time I'm picking Graduation over the Marshall Mathers LP, despite its influence, despite its all that. Just sonically, this is what I enjoy more, and I enjoy it more by a long shot. So that being said, not to mention Marshall Mathers has a few records on there that I'm not really that fond of towards the back half. Like the Drug Ballad, the Amityville, some of those records I don't really care for too much. Versus Graduation, there's not a record on there that I skip. Drunken Hot Girls, people want to shit on Kanye for that, but that to me is still a cool song. I'll never say it's good or great, but it's a cool song. Versus, and that's its weakest point. So just the pure no skippability of Graduation is also high on my list, or puts it over the edge, I should say. All right, let's jump to the East Region round of 32. Wrap this up. We got Illmatic versus 3 Feet High and Rising, De La Soul. Now, 3 Feet High and Rising again was a very controversial win in the first round over Ready to Die. Illmatic moves on pretty easily. This is just, again, 40 minutes runtime, 10 tracks, absolutely transports perfectly to today's hip hop climate in terms of just short and to the point hip hop. And it's just great instrumentation. Nas is rapping. Just too many of my favorite records. Versus 3 Feet High and Rising, I enjoy that album in the context of the album. Versus Illmatic, I enjoy those records in the context of the album, but I can also take them out. 3 Feet High and Rising, I can only take out a few records out there and just like want to listen to myself. But to me, what makes 3 Feet High and Rising is the skits and all that. Versus Illmatic, I can take anything out of there, and I can thoroughly enjoy it. Even the intro skit to me just feels so New York, just puts you in that place in that moment. And so Illmatic to me is just it has the context of the album, but also the ability to be taken out of context and still thoroughly enjoyed. The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill versus the Black Album. The Black Album wins pretty easily. Miseducation of Lauryn Hill is an awesome album, but the Black Album is Jay-Z. It's a signature moment in hip-hop. The documentary that I watched is absolutely awesome on it. So if you haven't seen the Black Album documentary, movie, whatever it's called, it's truly amazing. And it just really shows Jay-Z really capturing this moment. I think he really did think he was going to retire, and I think you could tell that by the way he put so much effort into the music and just the attention to detail that he had. Was Jay-Z's always had great attention to detail, but with this album it was on 10, and you had the introspective records, and you had the bangers, you had everything that we grew to know and love about Jay-Z with the Black Album. And so that was a phenomenal hip hop moment, and the Black Album moves on. Next, we got Life After Death versus Black Star. Life After Death wins easily over Black Star. I enjoy Black Star, but Life After Death, a double album to have almost no skips on there. Again, extremely high degree of difficulty, and Biggie executes it, and that more than makes up for Black Star, because to me, Life After Death has the bigger records. It has again the higher degree of difficulty as far as the album construct, and it also just to me has even just the deeper cuts to me are I enjoy more thoroughly on Life After Death. So the versatility, everything about it is just absolutely great to me. Black Star is an amazing album that has high elite caliber rapping, but Life After Death has that, as well as just amazing hooks and just amazing production, and everything about that album is incredible. It's one of my favorites. So Life After Death moves on. Next, we got It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back by Public Enemy versus Blueprint. It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back has an incredible influence and impact on hip-hop. In fact, hip-hop wouldn't be where it's at today without that album. So, again, this is one of those Straight Outta Compton, Good Kid, Mad City things, where it's like you can argue the influence of It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back is there, and that's cool, and I agree with that, and I would concede. But Blueprint to me is just a damn near flawless album, front to back, absolutely incredible. Just an essential hip hop album, and this is Jay-Z at his best, combining introspection as well as braggadocious. And again, this is a record that you can throw on and listen to every single track. So Blueprint to me moves on over It Takes a Nation of Millions. So that is the round of 32. Let's jump to the Sweet 16. We got Riding Dirty versus the Diary in the South. Riding Dirty, the 1 seed, once again moves on over the Diary. Again, I enjoy the instrumentation more on Riding Dirty. I enjoy the rapping slightly more. Again, the way Bun B and Pimp C play off each other to me is very interesting. I've always loved the dynamic of two artists playing off each other when they can do it well. And the Diary obviously doesn't have that with Scarface being Scarface. So Riding Dirty moves on. I just think in all aspects it's just a slightly better album than the Diary. And then I got the Drought 3 versus Trap Music. The Drought 3 versus Trap Music. I went with the Trap Music once again, so the 15 seed makes it all the way to the Elite 8, because the reason I have it over the Drought is this is finally where Wayne meets a matchup where it's like, okay, you got elite level rapping on both aspects. You got dope instrumentation on both aspects. With ATLiens, you felt the drift in Outkast, and that was one of the things that I may not have mentioned in my decision earlier, but it played into a factor of me picking the Drought 3 over ATLiens, because you felt that split in Outkast. You kind of felt this is them trying to go their separate ways, but still trying to maintain a cohesion. And then that was obviously the last album before they did their double solo album, Outkast, Speaker Box, Love Below type thing. And so the Drought 3 had, its matchups were pretty easy. They were all flawed. So you had Dirty Sprite 2 in the first round, where it was okay, that's a dope album, that's a really influential South album, but it had a lot of skips on it. And then again, ATLiens had its core. Trap Music is a project that doesn't have many flaws, and so that to me is what it is, again, why the Drought 3 loses here. And that's also why Trap Music got to where it got to. Soul Food, the content didn't grab me. In Search of, NERD, the melodies didn't, some of the melodies didn't work for me. So Trap Music and the Drought 3 were both benefits of just having flawed matchups, at least from my perspective. And when it came down to the Drought 3 versus Trap Music, I just had to ask myself, T.I., the influence of Trap Music is absolutely amazing. Again, the Wayne influence of the Drought 3, you can argue, is huge, because yes, he's taking the hottest beats and rapping over them, and that was a mixtape formula back in the day. But T.I., this is like the invention of Trap Music. This is T.I. being his absolute self, authentic self, rapping aggressively, braggadociously, just very, very charismatic at the same time. And as a T.I. fan, and don't get me wrong, I'm just as big of a Lil Wayne fan, but as a T.I. fan, I think it's personal preference. I think that's really all it is when it comes to the Drought 3. The Trap Music just has it all. It has the studio quality production behind it, but it also has the elite rapping. Whereas again, the Drought 3, it's got that kind of imperfection to it, where it's beautiful in its own sense, because it doesn't have the studio quality, and that worked for other matchups. But when you go to a complete project versus Trap Music, it's just Trap Music to me is a better project, and one that I enjoy more. So Trap Music moves on by the slightest hair. That was one of the toughest matchups in this round. Another tough matchup as we move to the West here, the Chronic versus Doggy Style. I went with Doggy Style, and total preference. And this is kind of how this bracket is. It's everybody's personal preference, and I'm gonna try and explain mine here. So the Chronic has the great records and Nothing But a G Thing, all of these essential hip hop records, and the Chronic has so much influence, and the Chronic is a precursor to Doggy Style. But you know what? Doggy Style, to me, I don't know if I've ever heard an album that's more complete. That's more complete than Doggy Style. It's just the skits work perfectly. At sometimes the Chronic skits feel like they detract a little bit from the body of work. Doggy Style, to me, they work absolutely perfectly. Snoop Dogg, once again, this is just elite level rapping from Snoop Dogg. I mean, every flow is just so in pocket. In fact, one of my favorite stories about this album is actually a recent story that I found out about 2 years ago when JID, this Atlanta hip-hop artist who signed to J. Cole, when he was making his project at that time called The Never Story, J. Cole said, I'm going to lock you in the studio and I want you to listen to these 4 albums on repeat. And one of the 4 albums was Doggy Style. And he's like, I want you to listen to Doggy Style because you will learn how to flow. You'll learn how to just bob and weave throughout a project without leaving the pocket, so to speak. And I know I'm using a lot of technical terms here, but Doggy Style does that to me. Doggy Style is an album where Snoop Dogg is just, it sounds so effortless and perfect every time you listen to it that I just thoroughly enjoy it. Whereas, sometimes I don't get that with the Chronic. And Doggy Style also has so many humorous moments, and to me it's everything the Chronic is but slightly better. Like, there's times when I listen to Doggy Style front to back, and it is one of the albums that I listen to front to back the most of any of all of the albums in hip hop. That is one of the probably 5 that I listen to the most front to back because I thoroughly enjoy it. But there's times when I listen to this album and I'm like, damn, I think this Doggy Style might be the best album of all time. And the Chronic, when I listen to that, I'm like, damn, this is one of the best albums of all time. But it's not. This is the best album of all time. And that's what I sometimes get when I listen to Doggy Style. It's just that perfect to me. So Doggy Style moves on by the slightest hair. The next, we got the Battle of Kendricks. To Pimp Butterfly versus Good Kid, Mad City. This is a civil war within the Kendrick Lamar fan base. A lot of people prefer the pop sound of Good Kid, Mad City, the very mainstream commercial sound that Good Kid, Mad City has, combining with the amazing storytelling, great features. It's got the story in it that To Pimp a Butterfly has its story, but it's a lot deeper, and you have to dig a lot deeper to get it. Good Kid, Mad City is one that you can listen to a couple times and you understand the story. Don't get me wrong, you're still learning intricate parts throughout multiple listens, but for the most part, you only have to listen to that album twice to really fully understand it. Versus To Pimp a Butterfly is just a complex album. Again, talk about degree of difficulty with Life After Death. To Pimp a Butterfly, that to me is the greatest album when it comes to degree of difficulty and execution. To Pimp a Butterfly, has all these themes of black empowerment, self-love, self-hate, and it has and meanwhile it has all these, like, it's combining all these genres of rock, rap, trap, poetry, blues, funk, jazz. Like, all these sounds are clashing together, but they do so beautifully. And there's all these different characters too. There's young Kendrick, there's the devil, there's Kendrick friends, there's like women, there's God, there's all these different characters, and they're just interweaving all throughout the story, and it all just comes together at the end by this amazing poem that's being recited throughout the album, and each line that it ends on just leads so perfectly into the next. It's an album that is so rich in depth and concept that you could just keep digging and finding more. And that, to me, is what's so rewarding about To Pimp a Butterfly. It's not only the sonics of it. I think it's just timeless music when I listen to it. But not only am I getting that, but I'm getting new things from every listen still. And this is an album I've listened to front to back over 200 times. It's an absolutely phenomenal album. It's an album where I'm pulling things like, oh, I didn't realize that line in track 6 connects to this line in track 13. And this is after 100 times of listening to this album, not counting the times I've just played one single or another single. And so to me, Butterfly does everything Good Kid, Mad City does, but does it on a deeper level. And again, I've always been a fan of jazz. My father's a huge jazz fan, and so I kind of have that in my genes to enjoy that selection of music, that realm of music. And to me, Spin Butterfly brings a lot of that jazz and funk into hip hop and blends it so perfectly. So maybe that's a personal bias of mine, but to me, Spin Butterfly is just an absolutely amazing album that I think is going to evolve perfectly with time, and it's just so rich in substance that you're never going to get bored with it. It may be challenging to listen to the first time because it's a longer listen at an hour 18, but it is so rewarding. And after the first or second time, or after second or third time, I should say, not a lot of people have told me that, hey, this is a challenging album. It's, it may be challenging at first to listen to, but when you listen to it at first, then you want to listen to it again. Then when you listen to it again, you want to listen to it again. And then pretty soon that the challenges of that album, of it just being so complex and being all over the place, suddenly everything begins to click with more listens. And if you're not even wired like that, you can also just take these records out of context, like Complexion. That has its own message outside of the context of the album. Inside the context of the album, it connects perfectly to hood politics, into the Black of the Berry, the tracks that's in between, and also in How Much a Dollar Costs. Like, all those tracks together are so tied perfectly in terms of their themes and their concepts. But you take Complexion out of the album, and it's still got a message. It's still a beautiful song that you can listen to. These Walls, still a beautiful song. All Right, that's become the theme song and the chant and the battle cry, if you will, of the Black Lives Matter movement. And that to me is just absolutely incredible. That taken out of the context of the album, it's become that important. But you put it in the context of the album, and it becomes even more important when you're coming off of that gut wrenching song You. So it's just an emotional journey. It's amazing. It's just pure artistry at its best. So Spin Butterfly moves on. Next, we got in the North region, we got My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy versus the Eminem Show. I went with My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, just again, preference of content. The Eminem Show, again, Eminem's an artist who is extremely talented, has all the talent in the world writing wise, and again, could create these raw moments and has all these big time records. But My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, that production is just absolutely amazing. It blows me away every time. Now, I know Kanye had a lot of help with this album, but man, oh man, every time I listen to My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy over Eminem Show, it is just so apparent which album I like more. And that's no disrespect or discredit to Eminem Show, but that's just a personal preference. And when you're getting this late in the tournament, a lot of it's going to be personal preference, because a lot of these artists and albums are on similar playing fields as far as quality goes. So then it just becomes, what do you prefer more? And to me, the production, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy is one of the greatest albums ever in terms of production across any genre. And I don't pretend to be educated in many other genres, but I've done plenty of research, and I've seen plenty of people who are credible and have that and can make that kind of opinion, make that same exact statement, that it is just an absolute masterpiece from production standpoint. And it shows. It shows when you listen to it. It's a journey. It's cinematic. It's amazing. So My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy moves on. Then we got another Kanye battle, College Dropout versus Graduation. Personally, I went with College Dropout. I've been hearing people recently try to argue Graduation's better, and as much as I love Graduation, hey, I don't want to put up too much of a fight, but to me, College Dropout, the moment it was, the skits that make it so perfect. Now you can argue that the skits, that College Dropout needs the skits and everything to be at its peak, and that's true. You miss a lot of the theme of the College Dropout without the skits, and and you're just listening to them on its own. But The College Dropout to me is an incredible album that does a lot of amazing things, and it does it on the level of Graduation, but has the moment with it, and also has the just the, I don't know if nostalgia is the right word, but it just captures Kanye and crystallizes Kanye so perfectly that, to me, The College Dropout is just an amazing album. When I listen to it, it just, every time, it reminds me of how special it is. So The College Dropout moves on. Next, in the East region, we got Illmatic versus the Black Album. Illmatic moves on over the Black Album, as much as the Black Album is a great Jay-Z album. I couldn't even pretend to pick Black Album over Illmatic, just because of how amazing and truly talented Nas was with that album. And I hate to have Nas pick an album over Jay-Z. Don't mean to start any beefs here again. Don't mean to rehash some old beefs, but Illmatic to me is just an absolutely perfect album. The Black Album is a great album to me. It's damn near perfect, but Illmatic is just Illmatic, and it's regarded as one of the greatest hip hop albums of all time, and there's a reason for that. It's truly spectacular, and every time I listen to it, it takes me to a place, and the Black Album does too. But Illmatic, the thing that puts it over is this was one of the first albums that really just kind of broke the trend of Eric B and Rakim, the rapper and the DJ, the MC and the DJ. And, not to say that hip hop wasn't going to go there, because hip hop, was really one of the only genres that did it like that. That really said, this is my guy, this is my producer, this is my artist, like, this is it, this is the pairing that's going to work together forever, and blah blah. Nas's Illmatic was one of the first albums that said, let me get this beat from over here. Let me get this beat from this dude. Let me get this beat from this dude. I'm just going to take the dopest beats and put them together. And now that's how 99% of hip-hop albums are made today. So the influence and impact of Illmatic is undeniable. Again, you could totally argue that if Illmatic didn't exist, that hip-hop was going to go that direction anyways. And that's probably fair. But, hey, I mean, the truth is, Illmatic does exist, and Illmatic was one of the first albums to do that. So, therefore, you have to credit the influence to Illmatic. So, Illmatic, to me, just a slight notch over Black Album for just, again, excellent rapping on both albums, excellent production on both albums, but influence of Illmatic and the legacy of Illmatic makes it move on. Next, we got Life After Death over The Blueprint. This was a very tough one, because, again, The Blueprint to me is one of those perfect albums that you can listen to on repeat. Life After Death is an album that you can listen to on repeat. You got maybe one or two records on there that I'm not always trying to listen to, but I can sit through them, especially if I'm doing other things. I can kind of zone out and stand through them. And that, to me, is what puts it over, is because it has very little skips, but it's also a double album. So, again, that degree of difficulty and execution, to me, moves it on slightly over Blueprint. Now, let's move to the Elite Eight. Here we are. So, we are near the finish line, folks. So, in the South, we have representing Riding Dirty and Trap Music. In the West, we have Doggy Style and To Pimp a Butterfly. In the North, we have My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy and College Dropout. In the East, we have Illmatic and Life After Death. Those are your representatives. Let's see who's going to represent each region in the final four. In the South, Riding Dirty versus Trap Music. I went with Riding Dirty. This was the one time Trap Music finally met an opponent that was foolproof, that had nothing to argue. You can argue with the drought, the lack of originality, because Wayne is jacking beats. You can argue with Soul Food, that it's just not as complete. You can argue with what was the first matchup, NERD, that there were some flaws in the melodies, and the album listening was too long. Riding Dirty is the one that at 55 minutes and and amazing production, amazing rapping. You really can't point out a flaw, and this is an album to me that every time I listen to it, I grow more and more a fan of. Riding Dirty is an album that, it was one of those albums that when I was listening to all these albums in preparation for this podcast, Riding Dirty was the one where I was like, oh, I can't wait to go back to that one. Like, I know I got to listen to these 5 albums today and take notes on these 5 albums, but man, I really want to listen to Riding Dirty again today, front to back. And Riding Dirty to me that's the reason it moves on. It was just one of those albums that really stuck with me throughout this process. So Riding Dirty is the representative of the South. Let's see who's going to represent the West. This was the toughest matchup to me in the Elite Eight. Doggy Style versus To Pimp a Butterfly. Again, I said this in the last round. There's times when I listen to Doggy Style and I'm like, man, this might be the best album of all time. This might be the best album of all time. Not one of the. To Pimp a Butterfly, I'm here to say, is to me, in my opinion, undoubtedly one of the best hip-hop albums of all time. The degree of difficulty, the everything I stated before, the characters, the concepts, the fact that there's absolutely no skips. You got melodies, you got rapping, you got a diverse set of instrumentation. You got substance that allows you to grow with this album each time. Doggy Style, you know exactly what you're getting after the first listen. You know there's no super deep hidden concepts to it. There's no off the wall craziness, and that's fine if you're somebody that's not looking for that. I understand. Like, you know, I'll admit I'm weirdly wired in that way where I want a project that I can continuously live and grow with. And that's why, to me, To Pimp a Butterfly holds such a special place in my heart, because it's an album that I still find myself growing with every year, every time I listen to it. And it's just such a beautiful moment. And it just, personal preference. Again, generational too. Like, the fact is, Doggy Style was before I was born. It was 94, I believe. Yeah, 94. Doggy Style was 94. I was born in 95. The end of 95, December of 95 to be exact. So this is way, way before my time. To Pimp a Butterfly is 2015. That's my second year in college. Yeah, it's my second year in college. My second year in college is To Pimp a Butterfly. Sorry, no, that is my first year. That's the second semester of college for me. The second semester of college, To Pimp a Butterfly came out. A time when I'm young. I'm 19. I'm growing up. I'm experiencing life. All these new experiences and everything. And so To Pimp a Butterfly, of course, has a natural bias in my heart, and a special place in my heart. But, you know, I do think if I want to make the argument, I think it just has a higher degree of difficulty. It's executed better. It has skits, not to the extent that Doggy Style does, but it has character interactions, which is essentially the same thing as a skit. It has it has a concept to it. It has substance to it, and it's just great music. That's, to me, timeless. And Doggy Style is timeless too. Again, this is a splitting hairs. I mean, this is what all these matchups are going to be, is splitting hairs essentially. And to me, To Pimp a Butterfly is the one that wins it over the degree of difficulty is the thing that I keep going back to. The degree of difficulty and its ability to grow and evolve. So next, in the North region, let's see who represents the North. We got 2 Kanye albums, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy versus College Dropout. Now, a lot of people, when you're ranking Kanye's discography, this is what they'll have as 1 and 2, and that's no surprise. My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy is absolutely amazing. College Dropout is this moment in time of oh my God, you know, who is this guy in the pink polo rapping and all that. But My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy is just, I can't get over how cinematic and amazing it is. And you talk about from a hip-hop perspective, from a historical perspective, this is Kanye when he's controversial. You know, he was controversial in the beginning, but he was a beloved controversial. My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy is really like when he has the Taylor Swift incident and all of these things. And so he's like, so this is like the moment where he actually becomes somewhat hated, this is where the Kanye divide really happens. This is that time frame. This is when he starts dating Kim. And he kind of crosses over into this iconic superstar and the superstar lifestyle rather than this, hey, I'm just a black kid from Chicago who likes to rap and likes to say prolific things and speak on a lot of important things. And My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy has that. Kanye is rapping his ass off. I think from a rapping perspective, Kanye raps better on My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, more technically advanced, better bars, better lyricism than he does on College Dropout. And the production on My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy is far, far better, in my opinion. So, to me, why wouldn't My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy win over the College Dropout? That's just my personal opinion. I can understand if you grew up on 2004 Kanye and College Dropout and everything, and that was your world. I can understand that, but to me, I just think objectively, I think if you were to ask everyone objectively what the better album is, it's My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy over College Dropout. Next, we have Illmatic versus Life After Death. Life After Death. The degree of difficulty of this is incredibly awesome. Again, it's like To Pimp a Butterfly. I put To Pimp a Butterfly's degree of difficulty even higher up than Life After Death, but Life After Death is still an incredibly high degree of difficulty. To execute a double album, it is hard. We've seen Tupac, one of the greatest hip-hop artists of all time, put together a great double disc album, but not an amazing double disc album. So it took an artist of Biggie's caliber to really make a double album work. But that being said, let me argue the degree of difficulty of Illmatic. So, what I talked about last round with Illmatic being this album that I'll grab these beats from these other artists. This is really one of the first times in hip hop that sequencing was a challenge. I shouldn't say it like that, because sequencing is always a challenge. It's an important and essential part of the art of making an album. But it was more challenging with this. There was a higher degree of difficulty with the sequencing of Illmatic, because this is one of the first times where you're taking a beat from here, a beat from here, a beat from here, a beat from here, and mashing it together to tell one story about New York. And Illmatic perfectly tells New York. It time travels me right to that moment of Nas in the 90s, growing up in Illmatic as a 19-year-old kid. So again, you're still getting like that aspect where it's still grabbing me today. So even though I'm generations removed from Nas, I can still relate, because he's talking from the perspective of a 19-year-old kid, a 20-year-old kid who's trying to find his way in life. And, that to me grabs me. So it's got the relatability to me, but it's also just the ability for him to understand and to figure out the sequencing and go, this goes this goes here, this does that, is truly amazing, man. Like, every time I have to think, like, Nas made Illmatic when he's 19. I have to, like, reevaluate my life, because I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe this guy did this at this age, and I'm 23 and I have nowhere near an accomplishment as close as Illmatic on my resume. So, Illmatic is just an album that it has a degree of difficulty like Life After Death. It executes it. It has no skips, elite rapping. Again, Biggie you get with elite rapping, but some of those features on there is just, like, and I'm not just saying this because of the R. Kelly stuff, but I didn't really enjoy R. Kelly on that hook of Effing You Tonight. I'm not just saying that because of all the sick stuff that R. Kelly's been doing, but I just truly think some of those hooks didn't work. Like the Lil' Kim, like, okay, I don't know, like I've just never been a Lil' Kim fan, and to be fair, I haven't all the way dove in on everything Lil' Kim's done. So maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'll regret saying this in a year or whenever I decide to dig into Lil' Kim. But I've just never gotten that. And, so there's moments on there that you could pick out. In Illmatic, there's nothing. There's nothing I don't like about that album. The hypnotic One Love beat, New York State of Mind, such a moment. Like, I've been to New York now. I went to New York for spring break, And that actually made me reconnect with Illmatic even more, love Illmatic even more, because it's like, wow, like I could really picture myself like being Nas sitting on the train, like going through the subway and stuff, just like listening to Illmatic. Like it's crazy. It has that New York feel. And that's something that's super incredible. Versus Life After Death, it really it's a very commercial album. Like it has East Coast elements, don't get me wrong, like Kicking the Door and all that, but it also has like Going Back to Cali, which is a very West Coast sound. Like Puff did an amazing job of making Biggie a commercial artist and having him adapt to all sounds, all regions. And so I don't want to take credit from it, but I have to acknowledge the fact that I lose a little bit of a placement, or I lose a little bit of a sense of the moment and place with Life After Death as opposed to Illmatic. So Illmatic moves on, completing the Final Four. The Final Four, we have Riding Dirty versus To Pimp a Butterfly, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy versus Illmatic. Let's start with the South versus the West. The South representative, Riding Dirty versus the West representative, To Pimp a Butterfly. I have To Pimp a Butterfly moving on. Again, this one to me is easier than the last one with Doggy Style, because to me Doggy Style is a better album than Riding Dirty. So all of the reasons I stated for previously, the degree of difficulty, the concept, everything about To Pimp a Butterfly, the growth with it. As sonically pleasing as Riding Dirty is, it doesn't have that stuff that To Pimp a Butterfly has. So To Pimp a Butterfly moves on. Then in the North versus the East, we got My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy by Kanye West representing the North. Nas Illmatic representing the East. Again, I went with Illmatic. The influence, the legacy, the longevity, the fact that I haven't really mentioned this on many of the Illmatic debates, but it is an album that we no doubt know it stands the test of time. New York State of Mind is still played everywhere to this day. And, there's records on there, One Love and all that still sound just as amazing today. The World Is Yours sounds just as amazing today as it did back then. And so Nas is just like with Illmatic, it's too incredible, and it has the longevity. It has now at this point 25 years exactly. It has 25 years of legacy behind it versus My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, which has 9. And so I have confidence that My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy is going to age well, but I don't ever see My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy mentioned in the same caliber, in the same breath as Illmatic, and that to me is a difference. The rapping on Illmatic is better, and just the longevity of Illmatic. Well, it may be unfair to point it out because they weren't created the same year. Illmatic to me has shown that it no doubt can stand the test of time. I think My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, I think moments will, but I think there's some that won't. And, that being said is why Illmatic moves on. Again, splitting hairs here. So, the championship matchup, To Pimp a Butterfly versus Illmatic. Funny story about this. I remember when To Pimp a Butterfly first came out. This was a month after. This was in mid-April, around finals time. I'm going back. This is back when I'm at Macomb Community College. So, Macomb Community College is just a regular community college where, you have a few people you associate with, but for a lot of part, you don't really have a lot of friends there. You don't really have a lot of people you talk to. But I had this one kid in my math class that absolutely loved hip-hop. So we would talk hip-hop all day. And he was telling me, and he was like, To Pimp a Butterfly is dope, man. He's like, it's really dope. And we had been talking about that album for weeks at that point. And I was like, I know. And I'm like, what's your favorite album of all time? And he's like, honestly, it's Illmatic. He's like, I'm not trying to be that guy that grew up or that's just trained to say Illmatic because that's what history says. He's like, that's how I really feel. And I totally understand him, because I feel a lot of the times when people say when I say I love Illmatic, people don't believe me. People think I'm saying that because I'm trained, because I'm programmed, because I'm wired to think that way. But no, I really, really appreciate the beauty of Illmatic and the amazingness of Illmatic. So I was like, yeah, I feel you. And he's like, so what's yours? And I'm like, honestly, man, I think it's To Pimp a Butterfly. And so then we had this long discussion because he's like, what? He's like, man, he's like, that album just came out. He's like, this and that. And I'm like, I know. He's like, Illmac's been out 20 years and like, and that album, like, we weren't even born, and it still hits us today. And I'm like, I know. I'm like, but I know I'm projecting here, but I think To Pimp a Butterfly is going to be that same way. There's a reason it is the most critically acclaimed album outside of two albums which have way less reviews than it. It is the most critically acclaimed hip hop album of since the year 2000, and is also the most critically acclaimed album since and is also the second most critically acclaimed album across all genres of music since the year 2000. And you can even argue that it is the most critically acclaimed because the amount of reviews aggregated for To Pimp a Butterfly was way higher than the small number of amount of reviews for the other album, which I won't mention because truthfully I forgot the name when I was doing the research. I should have wrote it down just to shout it out, but it had way less reviews than To Pimp a Butterfly, so I don't truly feel like the critical world of music considers that album to be the greatest album of all time, but just got a few small favorable reviews, and that was what catapulted it over To Pimp a Butterfly. But to put it in context, To Pimp a Butterfly, out of 55 critical reviews, now one of them was negative, and its average score out of 100, out of 100, its average score was 97. It was 97 out of 100 aggregated score. That is an amazing feat to accomplish. This is an album that you are talking about is so critically beloved. And I know there's a divide between the commercial listeners of it's too tough, it's too this, it's too that. But you know what? I've heard people like Charlamagne the God, who's a landmark in personality in hip hop, say, I'm not feeling To Pimp a Butterfly when it first came out. And then I heard him last year double back and say, you know what? I've been listening to Pimp a Butterfly, and I feel like, and I gotta apologize to Kendrick because I feel like it's an amazing album, and it was ahead of its time, and this and that. And so you're already seeing people, major people, change their mind about this album. The very few people that were against it from the jump. Now, of course, because Pimp a Butterfly is this so critically acclaimed album, of course there's going to be the small percentage of people that just want to push back because it's so beloved. But you're talking about an album that's truly widespread considered to be one of the greatest, if not the greatest album of all time in not only hip-hop but other genres as well. And again, it's an album that you're going to grow with, you're going to live with, and a lot of the content in there is going to really evolve well. The battle of the album is Kendrick dealing with his self-hate about what tendencies he has, and then then he grows up to love himself, and he grows from being the first lines of the album are, when I get signed, homie, I'm act a fool. And he's talking from his 16-year-old perspective, where he's ignorant to the world. He's just trying to figure things out, and he wants to he just wants to do all the traditional rapper stuff. And then he's ending it with Mortal Man, where he's like, when shit hits the fan, are you still a fan? Do you believe in me? Do you believe in my message? Do you believe that I can be the leader of this generation? And it just, the amount of growth you see on a personal level is just inspirational in that album. And again, it's just so much substance, and he's so vulnerable. Like, You is one of the most absolutely gut-wrenching songs I've ever heard in all my life. It is an absolute amazing masterpiece where he's just essentially created a whole song destroying himself, insulting himself, hating himself, and then he brings it all the way back to the end of the album where he talks about, I love myself, I love who I am, I know I'm flawed, but I want to do better, I want to be better, I want to be an amazing I want to be a leader to people, I want to show people what to do. I want to do God's work. I want to do what's right and what's and preach what's right and not what's wrong, and stand for the right things and this and that. And this album just gets so it's so deep, but he does such a great job of doing it through his perspective and other characters in there. And there's a message about God, that how much a dollar costs, which is an absolutely amazing record. And then there's The Blacker the Berry, one of the greatest in my opinion. Now, a lot of hip hop songs have tackled racism, and I don't want to be that white guy who's comparing racism tracks, but To Pimp Butterfly, with the song The Blacker the Berry, that to me is one of the greatest tracks ever at addressing racism, because Kendrick is addressing all the stereotypes of that white people project onto black people, and then he's saying, why did I weep when Trayvon Martin was in the streets, when gangbang made me kill somebody blacker than me? I'm a hypocrite. So Kendrick is really just turning the whole scope on its head. He's unleashing, he's lashing out. Each verse is building. He's ending each one with, you sabotaged my community, you made me a killing, or you made a killing, you made me a killer, emancipation of a real one. And like he's talking about, he's just really just pointing at the establishment, and then at the end he just flips the scope on himself, and he's like, I can't preach all these things, I can't preach this message of black empowerment when I myself or people that I'm representing or speaking for are killing black people. He's like, how can I claim to be about black empowerment when because of gang violence I'm killing other black people? And so that to me was just an absolute mind blow and amazing. And between that, the poetry, the interview with Tupac at the end, and just everything, just the way it's weaved together, man, it's an absolutely incredible album. It's a beautiful album, and I love it to death. It's, again, I'll admit any type of bias you want right now. I'll admit that I'm 100% biased when it comes to this album, because you can tell by the way I speak about it how impactful it is on my life. And I feel like this album was really just an amazing album, and it's so rich, and it will grow with time. And I think that saying that it's better than Illmatic now might seem very crazy, but you know what? I think over time, I think that becomes like a less and less crazy idea. And that will complete my strictly hip-hop album bracket here on the Last Track Review podcast here on Sports Radio Detroit. I want to thank everybody for listening. I know these were 2 long episodes. Thank you all for rocking with me. If you're still listening at this point in the episode, I greatly appreciate it. If you can, give a follow to Sports Radio Detroit if you don't already, and if you do follow them, make sure to follow myself at Real Chris Platte on Twitter, Instagram, whatever social media you like or prefer, and let me know your bracket. I'm gonna send the picture of the completed bracket filled out so that you guys can look at it and track it all, because I know this is a lot to listen to, but I also want to see your brackets. So as we celebrate, Michigan State lost in the Final Four last weekend. It's tragic. But today, Monday night, the national championship game, I figured what better time than to release my bracket finalize my bracket and put it out there and let everybody see it. So if you got a few minutes, just take 5 minutes, fill out this bracket. It's okay if you don't know all of the albums, that's fine. Again, the goal of this was to be as hands-off as possible, because when it comes to music, it's subjective. Everybody has their opinions. I have my opinions. Music has objective qualities, but it's not totally objective. So you can't ever say one opinion is truly 100% right and 100% wrong, because at the end of the day, music has a very strong subjective element to it. So, if you like, Drake over Eminem, that's okay. If you like Chance the Rapper over Kanye, that's cool. If you like, Dr. Dre over Kendrick Lamar, that's cool. That's fine. Like, everybody has their own taste. That's why I love seeing these brackets, because I love to see what other people's tastes are, and I love to kind of have those conversations with people. So please be sure to hit me up for the bracket. If you don't have it, I'll try to send the bracket with Sports Radio Detroit and have it posted with this. But if not, I have the image file that you could send or that I could send to you, and you could fill it out yourself. You could print it out, or you could just digitally edit it with text boxes. That's what I did. It took a few minutes. Or if you want, just kind of write it down on a piece of paper and just kind of write out your thoughts on it. So I'd love to hear everybody's thoughts. Thank you for listening. I'm excited. This is going to be a great week. The NBA season is wrapping up on Wednesday, so I will be talking about NBA award shows. So I'll be doing that, and then I'll be doing some playoff preview as well as we get ready for this final playoff matchup. Now, a heads up, the season ends on Wednesday, so I'll probably record that episode on Thursday, just because of the fact that I want to obviously know what the final seeds are before I start talking about matchups. And it looks like, especially in the Eastern Conference, it's going to come down to the last day to decide who's in the playoffs and who's out. So thank you everyone for listening. I'll see you later this week with some more NBA content. Go Detroit Pistons.
This has been an SRD production.
Because I feel like a salad tossing might feel good.
What?
Out of Bounds Detroit Podcast. Tuesday morning and Friday mornings here on SportsRadioDetroit.com.